Welcome to Making More, the podcast where high-performing business owners and visionary executives share how they're building more than just bottom lines. I'm your host, Billy Fischer, an engineering leader turned business and executive coach, and I'm guided by a personal mission to help leaders create clarity, build forward momentum, and make more of what matters most. Today's conversation is one I'm very excited to have because we're going to dive deep into transition, purpose, and identity with someone who spent her career helping some of the nation's most elite operators navigate life after service. My guest, Brage Garofalo, is a clinical researcher, a licensed therapist, a board member of the Navy's Special Operations Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting Navy EOD and divers and their families. And she was also the co-founder of a nonprofit that helps veterans, first responders, and high performers rediscover belonging and balance after their uniform comes off. We will talk about loss of tribe, the courage to slow down, and how true strength often begins when structure fades. Brage, welcome to Making More.
Thank you so much, Billy. It's so exciting to be here. I've really been looking forward to this.
Oh, it's going to be a fun conversation. You and I share a background, a history of swimming, and you have gotten to swim open water. And I just think there's so much that can be learned from the tenacity and the endurance that comes from open water swimming. So I hope we can use some of those metaphors today.
Absolutely. In fact, I swam this morning.
You did. All
I
right.
did.
Was it in a pool?
It was
All right. Very
too
good.
dark to be swimming in the bay.
Very good.
Feeding time.
So I want to walk through your story because it is a very unique one and sort of the kinds of people that you have been able to serve in your career. Because a lot of people probably go their whole lives without even meeting these types of people, but you have found a way to serve the elite special forces operators of the U.S. Armed Forces. And so I just want to understand, like, how did you come into that line of work? How did you come to get to know that path? And where has it taken you?
So, good question. It happened by accident. So, rewind about 11, 12 years ago. A good friend of mine at the time, her son deployed to Afghanistan right after 9/11. And he did, I think, 2 tours. He came back, and when he transitioned out, it was an incredibly bumpy transition. At the time, there weren't the number of service organizations to support veterans like there are now. So he was having a really difficult time. He had severe PTS, and finding him a traditional desk job wasn't really an option for him. So she and I tapped into our LinkedIn networks and essentially, like a patchwork quilt, if you will, put together a transition plan for him in terms of resources for his PTS, resources for his physical health, and then resources for finding him meaningful work. And so going through that and tapping into our network and talking with different people, we were able together to be able to put together a transition plan for him. And by the time we were done, I sat back and I thought that is one of the most gratifying experiences I've ever had. And I remember, and this was during, I can't remember if it was the first or second term of President Obama, and his wife, and I believe it was Jill Biden. So they were both talking about getting involved in supporting veterans. And so I went online looking for organizations that supported the transition of veterans. I found a couple of them. I signed up having no idea what I was doing. I was essentially flying by the seat of my pants. And I've been doing it ever since. And every so often, I would get an operator that would cross my path, predominantly team guys, Navy SEALs. And there's a lot of information about Navy SEALs and how they operate in terms of their training tempos, the training that they have to do, their expectations, the deployments, and so on and so forth. So I think at the time I knew that they operated at a much higher level, a higher frequency, if you will, than those of us that are mere mortals. And so I would try to do my best to be able to support them. And I found an organization called the Honor Foundation, and they are a transition institute that supports operators as they transition out of the military. And at the time, they were primarily supporting Navy SEALs. So I reached out to the VP of People Ops, which was Phil Dana at the time. Shout out to Phil Dana and Joe Musselman, and talked with them about and did, my own quote unquote cup of coffee in terms of learning about the organization and the curriculum and how do they support them and what do I need to be thinking about to be supporting these types of operators, because it's different in terms of how they think, how they approach things, how they problem solve. So my 30-minute call with Phil turned into an hour and a half, and I slowly started to get involved with the Honor Foundation as a volunteer, and then talking with Joe and with Phil, learning what the vision was for their mentor program, and then worked with Phil to not only build out their mentor program, but then, 3 years thereafter, I managed and led their mentor program so that I was, up to my elbows in working with operators and really understanding their perspective, what their needs were, and how to best support them.
Mm. It's so fascinating to me. I mean, we talk in the corporate world about high performance teams, and we use that as sort of a buzzword. But like, there is no such thing as a high performance team like a U.S. Navy SEALs team or a Delta Forces team. Like, that is next level. Like the type of training, like you said, but not only that, like the type of decision making that they have to make in a true life or death environment. You can't match that in a boardroom. You can't match that in in a nonprofit. It's just it's a different way of life, right? And so I think you're exactly right. The fact that you were able to come into that space, see that need, see the requirement for a special kind of emotional and intellectual connection with these individuals. And so thank you for just being able to provide them with that type of support.
I really enjoy it. It's one of the things that gives me such great joy is being able to support these men and women that are transitioning out.
Mm. You had a little history as far as your work career in clinical research, I think, for cancer patients. Is that right?
Yes, I spent 25 years doing clinical research in the biotech pharma space, with the last 10 years having a focus on oncology.
Okay, very good. Any lessons learned from that field?
A lot of lessons. I think in terms of leadership, the most important fundamental component to leadership, I think, and you see this everywhere on LinkedIn and other forums, is really about leading by example and leveraging your team and their strengths and letting them shine. So the old adage, a rising tide lifts all ships, is very true. If you leverage the strength of your team and you let them shine and you empower them to make decisions and you lead by example, you roll up your sleeves with them, they will work infinitely harder than if you just tell them what to do and you silo them and you just limit what they can do and you don't empower them. And I saw a lot of that in all the companies that I worked for. Is there were some really exceptional leaders that learned how to step out of the way and say, it's on you and I'll be your wizard behind the curtain. And then you see, the flip side to that, which, is can be somewhat, unfortunately, toxic and restrictive.
Yes, I think I always try to model myself when I was in leadership positions at Toyota to be the type of a manager or supervisor that was multiplying the efforts of the team. So I want to make sure that like what I'm doing is helping them grow. It's helping them get opportunities that they haven't had before. And then when the lights go off and it's just me in a room with other leaders, it's about showcasing their talents and helping lift them up so that they might not have a place in this room yet, but I want to try and carve that path so that they get there. And so that was always kind of the way in which I led. It was from a little bit of a place I've talked about this before on the podcast. That was kind of against the Toyota way, where the Toyota way was always customer first, right? About taking care of the customer, taking care of that downstream user of the forklifts in our case. But for me, it was always about taking care of my people, because I felt that if I took care of my people and my people were well looked after, like they're going to take care of the customer automatically because they're being supported in ways that let them sustain that.
100%. Could not agree more.
I know I've had this debate with many people. It's just kind of it's a philosophical difference, I think. And you have to decide in your life which path you're going to be on. And people have had great success going customer focused approach. You think Amazon and Jeff Bezos, they are 100% like customer focused. That's their core value and what they put on the walls even. But for me, it's about taking care of the people that you're charged with leading. And I think that's maybe very similar to what the military, I think, holds dear when they're taking care of protecting a unit or a squadron or whatever it may be. You got a mission, sure, but number one, the mission is to get everybody home.
Yes.
Mm.
Simon Sinek, he's one of my favorites.
Yep.
And I'm going to paraphrase this, but he essentially said that if the employees love what they do and they believe in what they do, then everything else will be showcased from there in terms of their output, their the way that they engage with one another, their level of engagement, with the organization. And I really believe that it's true. It all boils down to how they're treated. And
Mm.
then in the book Leaders Eat Last, and I think you and I have talked about this, there's a section in it where Simon Sinek talks about creating that safe environment for employees, where they come into the workplace as a father, as a mother, as a wife, as an aunt, as every entity. And they don't lose those personas when they walk in the door as an employee. They just put on yet another hat. And it's really up to the leader to embrace all of that and create that safe place like they would have in their personal life, where they're allowed to make mistakes. They're allowed to share opinions. They're allowed to, respectfully push back and say, I don't think this is a good idea because, and that piece of the book has resonated with me in terms of how I view organizations and how I want to be as a leader, no matter what the forum is. I want that safe place. I want my team to feel that they can come to me and say, I don't agree with this, or that they can make mistakes without the fear of being punished. And I think that's really powerful, of just creating that environment to say, you know what, we're all going to fall down, myself included. It's how you choose to pull yourself back up that matters. And did you learn from it?
Mhm. It's such a dangerous thing in a workplace or in government office, even when the people doing the work don't have the power or the safety to speak up and raise a concern, to disagree.
Yeah.
I think you get into this unfortunate cycle of just people being yes men, yes women, and they just want to reinforce what the boss is saying. And it's just such an unhealthy thing when the top leaders don't get pushback and don't raise the voices of those within their organization so that you can get kind of the true landscape of what is the problem, what are we going to do to solve it. And so, I was blessed at Toyota in many ways, because we had overall kind of the value of respecting people. And that was something they did put on the walls. Like they actually had marketing come in and artists, and they wrote it on the wall. It was very important. And so I think, when you hold that value up, a lot of good can happen. But it's just you can't do it in a way that it's cynical, where you're putting it on the wall, but you're not really living it. You're not really embracing that across all levels. And so I think that's what I look for now in coaching relationships, as leaders that truly understand that want to hear that feedback, because I know I'm going to give it to them as a coach, but it's about the people within their organization. When they give it to them, are they going to respond the best way to that feedback?
Right. It's one thing to talk the talk, but can you walk the walk?
Yep. I want to talk about another book that you recommended to me. Not enough people recommend books. So if you see me on the street, recommend a book. But it was Sebastian Junger's The Tribe.
Yes.
And it was a quick read, like you said. It didn't take much to get through it at all. And it was such an important one, though. And again, going back to the military service, and I haven't talked about it much on this podcast, but I had the dreams of military service growing up. I had aspirations of following in my dad's footsteps. He's a Vietnam vet. He was an aircraft mechanic and a career Air Force retired master sergeant, in fact. So I grew up when that career was over. He was already out of the Air Force, had moved on to his next thing in life, and he still had model airplanes though, and he had pictures on his walls, and he took us to air shows. And so I grew up learning all about airplanes, and it was a passion of mine. I wanted to be a pilot. I got to go to school in Florida on a college scholarship with the Air Force to go to like the best aerospace engineering school in the country. And was so just delighted at everything that was falling in place. I thought, this is it. This is perfect. And then I went to field training in the summer of '06 and spent 4 weeks at Tyndall Air Force Base. And it was life changing, just a fantastic training environment. They say that training is the closest thing you can get to war. And I won't go anywhere near saying that it was like I was at war, because it wasn't. No one was trying to kill me. But it was just that constant just immersion in a truly disciplined environment, and just so much from a leadership standpoint that you can gain from that. You think even like the leadership labs that you get to do, just physical fitness and physical challenges, and solving a problem while you are like the most stressed out you've ever been. And I just, again, I get to now live kind of um live, what's the phrase, you get to live vicariously, I think. Yeah, through all of my college classmates now that got to go and actually be pilots, and I get to see them and see what they've accomplished. My dreams died on an interstate on the way home from field training. I was in a car accident, and just a long story of it, I got medically disqualified after that, and lost my Air Force scholarship, lost that path of a career. And so when I told you that story before, you were like, you lost your tribe, and I was like, I've never thought of it like that, but I kind of did. And I think, so many veterans that have gone on to serve and then have gone on to foreign combat and um, built those military relationships with their brothers and sisters, they come home and that's gone. You lose the structure, you lose the camaraderie, and what are you left to transition into? And I'm just so thankful that organizations like the ones you've been a part of are there to try and give them something back so that they can acclimate to civilian life.
There are so many different organizations that really help put that back together for them. Because even if the veteran stays within a hub of a base, like in Coronado or Virginia Beach or, Fort Bragg in North Carolina, where there's operators, the commonalities, that's where the two roads diverge, because the active duty are still active duty. And as the veteran transitions and moves further and further away, the dialogue is different, the language is different, the interests are different, because the veteran is no longer going on the same training training excursions where they're not going on missions and they're not doing the same activities. And so the tribe might still be there per se, but the tribe really isn't there like it was. And so how do you create a new tribe, a new community that's just as meaningful and just as supportive and still reflects that structure that they had, even though they're on two separate paths? And so that's something that has been really important to me. I think what the transition pieces in the organizations do that are out there, like they've got it locked down to a science, like it's a well-oiled machine. But my focus when I'm working with my guys on transition, like we'll go through the technical pieces of, learning how to network and how to have a cup of coffee and working on the resume and a LinkedIn profile and la 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 la. But the pieces that I focus on most are the intellectual and the emotional piece of the transition. Because if you're not in the right headspace to transition and you've got other stuff going on in the background, and peripheral noise, or you're getting medically discharged and that wasn't your choice. And so there's that lack of control piece, then you're not going to have a successful transition because you're so focused on everything else. And so for me, my job that I've kind of given to myself is to make sure that my guys are in the right headspace and thinking about it in the right way, and that they know that they have the support and that they're not alone. What I have found, and I find this to be highly ironic, is they spend their entire career as part of a team. Like Navy SEALs, for example, they call them team guys. Team. Everything is done together. I mean, they're all in lockstep at some point in time and they do everything together. When they transition, all of a sudden it becomes, an individual sport. So how do we go from functioning as a team to, no, I'm just going to do this all by myself? And it all boils down to ego, really, is I've got this, I can handle it, it's not a big deal. Well, it is. And if you don't know where to start and you don't have anybody that you can lean on, it's going to be a real challenge. And then you start to spiral, and it's not uncommon to hear about operators that spiral where their transitions are just horrendous. And it's all because they're doing it alone. They don't have a tribe. They don't have anyone to lean on. And, it's a very stressful time. They're losing their identity. They're losing their community. They're losing everything that they have known for the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years. It's a lot.
It is. Where do they
So
find the accountability? Is it through relationships like with you, or is it through people in their lives that maybe weren't in the military? Can they find it like they had when they were in the service?
I think that sometimes they can, and it's not, I think that they can. It's knowing how to put together the new tribe and knowing that. So one of the things that I think is really important is building your own personal board of directors, or as my girlfriend likes to call, your own personal mafia. And these are people who are part of your inner circle, who will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, who will say, this is how you need to be doing it. This is what you need to be thinking about. And don't bother with that. Think about this, don't do that.
Yeah.
And if you can find people with whom you really trust that you can call when you're having a really bad day. So, for an operator to call another operator and say, my day just went off the rails, this other operator understands exactly what that means. And so that's the kind of community that I want them to be able to have once they walk out of the door of the Army, of the Navy, of the Marines, of the Air Force, is to be able to say, I have people who understand me, who speak my language.
And do those networks or the relationships, they're lifelong that you found, or do those relationships kind of fade as they pick up their post-military service life?
They can be lifelong. I mean,
Okay.
so there's a whole community now of veteran operators who have transitioned out. And, I have one friend who was Navy EOD, and he's in a particular job that has him traveling around and is in the defense space. So when he goes to trade shows and he goes to different conferences and meetings, he's plugging right back into his community. He gets to see a lot of his old friends in which he keeps up with, but now he gets to see them and spend time with them. And
Hmm.
so they're out there. It's how do we make sure that the veteran that's getting out has that connection, has that introduction, knows that that community exists, and that you can just pick up the phone or you can send a text and just be like, today just was awful, and be able to talk about it. And the person on the other end's like, oh, dude, I get it.
I think it's something that people that didn't serve in the military, myself included, I don't know if we could ever understand kind of what that relationship is like when you're leaning on somebody in a life or death environment. But I am happy to hear that it can be a lifelong relationship, that you get to continue having that person as a support person, as a sounding board, whatever it may be. But I wonder if, because I don't want to diminish, everybody's got a story, right? Whether you were in the service or not. So leaders that weren't in the service, what lessons can they take from these brotherhoods and sisterhoods, and can they adapt that kind of a relationship to business?
That's an excellent point. I think to some extent, yes, because you've got the trust, you have the leadership, you have the loyalty. And in the business world now, there's not a lot of loyalty to an
Mm,
organization per se. It's not like it was, back in the 50s and 60s. But there's loyalty to your team.
mm,
And I think as an operator, or even as a veteran, because they all show up. They have learned how to show up for their team and be part of a team and respect the team. And so I think that there's a lot of different takeaways that veterans bring to an organization, um, that's ingrained in them at this point. So it is the loyalty, it is the critical thinking, it's the problem solving, it's how do we do this as a team? How do we learn from our mistakes and make sure that we've got all the right pieces in place at the right time? And they all
mm.
come plug and play with that
Yeah.
ability to really lead large teams, small teams. They work incredibly well independently. They are really good at problem solving and working through, and with their critical thinking, working through a process. Is this going to work? Is that going to work? Who do I need to talk to that's smarter than I am, that knows how to help me put this piece together? And they're very humble. Every veteran that I have ever worked with is very humble. You will never see somebody that just assumes that they're the smartest person in the room. And they don't want to be the smartest person in the room, as neither do I. I never want to be the smartest person in the room. And if I am, we are in trouble. And so they all come plug and play with these wonderful qualities that any organization would be lucky to have, because you can teach certain ideologies and philosophies to somebody in college, but a college graduate that's never served and certainly never deployed doesn't understand what it looks like to work as a fully functioning team, to really understand what leadership looks like and what problem solving is really about. And it's sometimes problem solving is about leveraging your relationships. It's not about a specific task per se. It's who do I know that knows more about this? How do I make that connection for my team? And you can't teach that in college.
No. Outside of those that are training to go into the service as an officer, you really can't. Like you said, it takes It takes deployment. It takes years of service. And again, I wonder, like, would we be better off if we went back to a model where that was kind of like a requirement? Now, again, I don't think we need to bring the draft back or anything like that, but just there are a certain subset of the population that is far away from that service mentality, and it's all about me, all about the individual. And I think as a society, we've kind of lost that tribe mentality, that service over self mentality, and
Yep.
and it shows. Mm.
The one thing that you will hear consistently out of a veteran's mouth is we.
Mhm.
So in one of the exercises that we'll go through is a mock interview, and tell me about a time when you did X, Y, and Z. And their response is, well, we did this, because they operate as a team. And what's really difficult and oftentimes uncomfortable is saying I, and putting any kind of attention or focus on themselves in terms of what they did and what their contribution was, even though it's very necessary, because as a hiring manager, you need to be able to see what was their contribution to whatever experience or skill set that's they're talking about on the resume. And it takes a lot of coaching to be able to shift the mindset from we to I, to say, well, in this particular instance, I led this team doing X, Y, and Z, and getting them to shift away from the we.
I've always had that too. I wonder if it's maybe just the way that my dad had kind of raised me, just having that we mentality, that service mentality. I even now, like I'm started my own business. I'm a coach, and certainly we're a part of a larger group of coaches at Focal Point. But at the end of the day, I'm the coach. It's going to have to be me that provides the service to you, and I'll still find myself using like, well, we offer things like that, right?
I
And
do the same thing with my clients. So I just want to just clarify, I'm not a licensed marriage family therapist yet. I'm an associate.
not
So
yet.
I have a registration number so I can practice, but I'm not fully licensed. So I just want to put that out there in case anyone from the BBS is listening. But I approach my clients, and even the guys that I work with, the same way. I always speak in we. And one of the reasons I do that is because I want to make sure that they know that they're not alone. Because oftentimes, when I'm working with an operator, they think that they're the only ones who are going through this and having these particular feelings. And no, you are absolutely normal. You are where you're supposed to be. Transitions are ugly and messy, and it's okay to feel exactly how you're feeling when you're feeling them, but you're not alone. And so if they don't have a fully formed tribe yet, then I'm the de facto tribe. I insert myself and I'm like, we. And so I will approach everything that we do when we talk about it. I'm like, well, we need to do this and we need to be thinking about this. And I'm like, but by we, I mean you, but I'm still like, you're stuck with me. Um, and I do that with my clients as well, is, we need to be thinking about this. We need to be thinking about that. And by we, you need to be thinking about this. And these are going to be our treatment goals that we are going to be putting together. And by we, I mean you, but it's still we are in this together. You're not alone. You don't have to do this alone. So I'm a big fan of the we statement, even though when you're interviewing for a job, it needs to be the I statement.
Yeah. I want to talk about one of your I statements. It was a story you shared with me about a swim you took, I think, around the Golden Gate Bridge, and maybe an encounter you had during that swim, a little bit of
Ah,
a frightening encounter.
yes. So it was the Frogman swim, which was a fundraiser for the Navy SEAL Foundation. And we were swimming under the Golden Gate Bridge. And I was literally surrounded by Navy SEALs, and apparently also by a harbor seal in the water. I'm almost positive that's what it was. That's what I continue to tell myself. So I'm halfway underneath the bridge, and I feel something bump me, and it bumps me on my leg. And it's like the most terrifying feeling. Like when you jump in the water in the bay, you know that you are smack dab in the middle of the food chain. Like you know where you are and where you fit, but you compartmentalize it and you ignore it. And then you just focus on the task at hand, which is just swim from point A to point B. So I'm swimming, I get bumped, I scream, and they're, as part of the safety that they have, they've got kayakers that will follow swimmers. Well, my kayaker, I mean, she looked like she was all of 12. Like if I had been attacked by a shark, there was literally nothing that she would have been able to do to help me. So I screamed, she asked me what's wrong. I'm like, something just bumped me. And her response was, oh, that sucks. Well, yeah, kinda. So I continue to swim and then I'm bumped again on my arm. And so now it's no longer professional courtesy. Like now this animal knows where I am and came back a second time to see, like, am I a competitor for food? Like, am I food? What am I? What's going to happen? And so now I'm like really freaked out. And one of the other swimmers, a team guy, was swimming next to me and asked me what was going on, and I told him, and he's like, "Well, that sucks." Yeah.
It's
And so,
consistent.
the whole time I'm thinking, what happened? And then he like swims away, and I'm like, "Well, what happened to this whole leave no one behind mentality?" And I was like, apparently that only happens like, in when you're downrange, like when you're getting bumped by an animal and possibly eaten, like it's every man for himself. And then the animal came back a third time and bumped me on my leg again. And at this point, I am freaked out to the nth degree. And I have never swam so fast in my entire life. I didn't even care what my stroke looked like. I didn't care if my head was in the water. I didn't care about anything. All I could focus on was getting the hell out of the water before this animal came back again. And you could see the shadow of the animal as it's swimming away underneath
Mm.
me. And I'm pretty sure it was a seal. I'm not 100% sure, but like I'm almost positive it was. I mean, like if it were a shark, like it probably would have taken a bite to see what I was. Like that's kind of what I tell myself.
Yeah.
So I finally got out of the water, and as you can see, like I'm intact. But yes, you get in the water and you know that you are literally in the middle of the food chain and you don't have a say. So it's just literally every man for himself when you get into the
That'll,
bay.
and that'll rattle you for sure. Holy cow.
It did. And so again, like you get in and you know that there's stuff happening below you. Like, it's like there's this whole ecosystem, this whole community happening below you. You just
It's
don't think
deep
about
water.
it. Yeah, just don't think about it.
Just don't think about it. Just keep
No,
swimming.
just keep swimming.
All right, Brage, I'm going to ask you the title question of the podcast. It is a fill in the blank question. So, making more blank is most important to you at this point in your life and career.
Making more, for me, every day is I want to make a difference. I want to make
Okay.
more of a difference, whether it's in somebody's life or in a certain situation. I want to be able to leave the world a little bit better than how I found it, whether it's small or a big impact. That's what I want to make more of more of an impact, to say, yes, I took from the world, but yes, I gave.
Making more differences in people's lives. And tell the audience now how they can connect with you and learn about the differences you're making as a marriage and family therapist.
So anybody that wants to chitty chat, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And then you can also reach out to me at my practice where I am working. It's B Garofalo at therapyinmotion.care. And I'm happy to chitty chat anytime. And if you're interested in talking about transition or tribe, please reach out. I'm happy to support you in any way that you need.
Brage, it's been my absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much and take care.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
Thanks for listening to Making More. If today's conversation sparked something in you, let's connect. You can find me on LinkedIn and Threads at Coach Fischer, FPT, or by visiting billyfisher.focalpointcoaching.com to learn more about how I help leaders create clarity, build momentum, and make more of what matters. This recording is copyrighted by Engineered Consulting Incorporated. Until next time, take care.